Hey guys, so the weekly outlooks are back and they're now going to be posted inside of the Telegram as opposed to inside of the Discord. So I'm going to be going over EU, GU, NAS, and US30 from a top-down analysis perspective so that we can get an understanding of what price action has done and what we're anticipating for the coming weeks. So if you have any suggestions, then let me know by dropping me a DM, but let's jump straight into this weekly outlook. We're starting off with EURUSD on the daily time frame. So let's analyze what has actually happened. Well, previously EURUSD was very bearish. It was creating a series of lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower low, lower high, lower low. And then we finally had a market structure shift right here where price put in this brand new higher high. From then we've come down and we've put in this higher low. And now we're on our way to put in a brand new higher high. So at the moment, the daily has flipped from bearish to bullish, which means our bias should be to buy. However, that is on the daily time frame. So as we go a little bit deeper and we start looking at all of the lower time frames, then we can potentially gain a different outlook. But for the time being, the daily is bullish. We've had a market structure shift. So what has price reacted from? Well, first we can see that we've got this order block right here, which price came, gapped, went straight through, and then from there we've had this reaction higher. Now we want to see price go ahead and break this high right here to confirm that we are actually in this bullish trend. So apart from that, we're actually creating internal substructure, which is also bullish. So that is a very good sign. Now moving on down to the 4 hourly, we can see that it's a very similar sort of outlook. So the 4 hourly was also very bearish, putting in lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, and lower lows. And then from there, we had a market structure shift right here, where we had the substructure building up to this nice higher high. From there, price gave us another substructure swing low. And then from there, we had another market structure shift on the hourly by the looks of it. And then from there, we've just been creating these series of higher highs, higher lows. So next week, I do expect nice bullish price action to put in a brand new higher high. So on the 4 hourly, there's no real areas of interest for us to look at. At the moment, price is potentially just reacting from this fair value gap that was created right here. As we can see, we've just wicked below it. So from this, I can potentially see higher pricing coming into next week directly from inside this fair value gap without pushing any lower. So going down to the 1 hourly, we can see that again, it is a very, very similar setup. On the hourly, we had bearish price action, so lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower low, lower high, lower low, and then we had this market structure shift. And then from there, price put in this higher high, come down, put in this higher low, and now we should see higher prices. So all of the higher time frames are indicating that we are bullish or have flipped bullish. And as you can see, the same fractal nature which we saw happening on the daily, we've just seen inside of this price action on the hourly as well. So it's nice to see that all of the time frames are aligning with our bullish bias. So if we mark this out on the hourly, we can see that that was the hourly area where we got the market structure shift. We had this substructure on the inside too. So that is nice to see. From there, prices retraced. And where have we tapped into? This order block, which is sat just below that fair value gap, half-heartedly nestled inside of it as well. So let's remove the 4 hourly fair value gap. This order block looks a little bit prominent. So from here, if we drop down and cycle down on the time frames, we can potentially start to frame up a trade for tomorrow. So the 30-minute, there's nothing really interesting for us to look at, and dropping down to the 15. Now, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. So what can we see? The same fractal nature that we saw happening all in this price action where we had this market structure shift. We're potentially seeing that same thing play out right here as well. What is price giving us? Price is currently giving us lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. So now if we go ahead and break this lower high right here and put in a higher high, from there we can see a retracement. Price can tap into an area of interest, and then from there it can continue and create that brand new higher high on the daily time frame. As we can see, the fractal nature of the higher time frames is showing itself in the lower time frame. So that is pretty interesting for us to see come tomorrow morning. So now what do I anticipate for tomorrow? Well, if we get a potential build-up of the Asia session such as this, and we see a sweep of the lows, putting in a lower low on this 15-minute structure. From there, if we see a market structure shift on a 5-minute, we can then take that as our Judas swing entry, which can then give us the confirmation on the 15-minute if we get the market structure shift. And then we can take a confirmation entry, which can give us the swing position going into the daily move as well. So I hope that made sense. If it didn't, drop me a DM and we can go over that. But that pretty much sums up EU on the higher time frames and the lower time frames and what it is potentially likely to give us. Moving on to a GU, and if we jump up to the daily time frame and remove the drawings, then we can get a fresh look at what's going on. So similar story with GU. Starting off on the daily time frame, we can see that price was giving us a series of lower lows, lower highs, lower low, lower high, lower low, and then from there, price came up, gave us a market structure shift, creating that same internal substructure, leading to this bullish price action. We've now put in this higher high on the daily time frame. So let's mark this out. Now, again, that is giving us confidence in both pairs because they're correlated, they're moving in a similar pattern. Now, on the daily, we do have a little bit more of a deeper pullback that GU can give us, potentially down into this daily fair value gap. Now, this looks pretty interesting because it is sitting just below this sort of liquidity that we've got right here. So from there, we can see this liquidity being swept, price pushing into this fair value gap, and then higher pricing. Now, if GU drops that little bit further lower, then potentially EU can also do the same. But we can figure out what happens when we get there and when the market's open. But apart from that, the daily looks pretty good. We've pretty much flipped bullish. So again, similar bias to EU, looking for buys. Now, coming down to the 4-hourly, again, very similar story. We're putting in a series of lower lows, lower highs, and lower lows. And then we had this nice market structure shift where we had this substructure creating this nice bullish price action, which has now given us this higher high and a high low, a high high. Now, again, if we deep dive and take a look at what's actually going on, we can see that this does look very much so like liquidity, which is sat right above that fair value gap with some internal liquidity as well. As we can see, we had this internal liquidity, which got swept, tapped into this order block, and then we had this push to the upside. So from there, we can potentially see this liquidity now being swept and price potentially giving us something like this, where it sweeps that liquidity, and then from there, we see higher pricing and all of this gets taken out. So that's what I'm potentially looking at on GU, but everything that I say doesn't have to happen, right? What we can potentially see is a similar story to EU, where we have this fair value gap on the 4-hourly, which price is currently inside. And then when markets open, we can just get a push straight up from there. Or we can potentially see price come down into this order block a little bit lower and then go higher from there. There is no reasoning as to why price does have to come out all the way to the bottom here and take out this liquidity and then go higher. It can come back at a later time to do that. So take everything I say with kind of an understanding of what price is trying to do versus what price actually does. And once we kind of put those two and two together, it gives us an overall picture of what we're looking at in the markets. Now, dropping down to the hourly, I think it is, again, a similar story. We've got this very nice bullish sort of price action where we're putting on a series of higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, and then we've got all of this liquidity which is now built up. So I do want to see price come and sweep this liquidity for a higher quality trade. That would give me a little bit more confidence that price wants to push higher. If we don't get that, again, I'm happy with taking a trade if price just taps into here and goes from there. So let's frame up what we can potentially see happen tomorrow morning. Now, if we get a build-up of Asia session similar to EU like this, where we get a sweep of the lows, we tap into this order block that we've got right here, get that 5-minute market structure shift, we can take our entry and then from there see higher prices to create a brand new higher high. But if that doesn't happen, we can potentially see price give us that fake market structure shift, build liquidity, which can be the inducement for price to go lower, come and tap into this area right here, take out this liquidity, and then from there we see higher prices. So we've got sort of two ideas to play around with. Again, it's all dependent on what the market does come tomorrow morning. But that pretty much wraps up EU and GU. And if we move over to US30 and we jump up to the daily time frame, now what can we see? Well, price was, by the looks of it, pretty bullish. We had this higher low, a higher high, a higher low, a higher high. Then we've had a market structure shift where prices come, pushed below, broke and closed below this previous higher low. So now we've had a market structure shift and we've put in this lower low. From there, price has retraced, put in this lower high, and we've kind of got this volume to the downside, which kind of indicates that we are potentially on our way to put in a lower low. Now, if that is the case, then the daily, by the looks of it, has flipped bearish. However, this is not something that I incorporate in my trading. I don't usually look at the weekly, but taking a look at the weekly, we can see that price is putting in a higher high. That was just a higher low because we didn't break below that low. And this is just a nice higher high. So, or on its way to become a higher high. So by the looks of it, on the weekly, we are still bullish. It doesn't really change my perspective that the daily has gone bearish because I don't focus on the weekly. But just for the sake of it, because I've seen it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out this weekly fair value gap that we've got right here. And going down to the daily, we can see that that aligns perfectly with this order block. So what I want to see if price is going to continue bullish is I want to see confirmation from this area right here that price wants to go higher. If we don't get that and price completely just blasts straight through it, then the daily has flipped bearish. We're going to be bearish. I want to see lower prices. But at the moment, we've got this daily area, this daily order block, this weekly fair value gap. And then just below it, we've got this nice fair value gap as well. So we've got these two areas of interest sat right below where price currently is. Come tomorrow, we will then see how price behaves, how price reacts when it gets into these areas. And if it gives us indication that it wants to go higher, then we're going to stick with the weekly outlook, which is that we are bullish. If it blasts straight through them, then we're going to stick with the daily outlook, which is that we are bearish. So that is the daily. Let's identify what has happened. So that was the breaker structure to the upside. That was the market structure shift to the downside. Price then come and it has tapped into the extreme of this zone right here from where it has then absolutely collapsed and just dropped. And now we're coming up to these areas of interest. So let's drop down to the 4-hourly and what can we see? A 4-hourly has also flipped bearish. Again, what can we see? Price was putting in a series of higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, and then it failed to put in a brand new, it didn't give us that market structure shift, put in a higher high, we had a higher low, and then from there it failed to give us a brand new higher high, right? Then we had this consolidation for quite a while. So we stayed in this zone for around 16 days, so just over 16 days. And then we finally had this push to the downside where we then got the market structure shift on the 4-hourly. So again, let's identify what has happened. We had this as our higher high. We failed to create a higher high. This was our most prominent low, which was the higher low. All the way over here, we then had a break of structure or a market structure shift to the downside, which now means that prices flip bearish not only on the daily, but also the 4-hourly. So now just taking a look at the daily and the 4-hourly, what we can potentially do is play it zone to zone. So we know that we've got this weekly area of interest right here. What potentially happen is price can come in to this area, give us sort of a bullish push to the upside, but being in line with the bearish sort of momentum that we've got on the 4-hourly, it can then come up to this 4-hourly fair value gap and then continue to drop lower from there. So does that make sense where we're playing with the different zones that we've got? So if we identify this as our 4-hourly fair value gap and just below it, we've also got this 4-hourly fair value gap as well. So what can potentially happen, if I just reiterate what I just said, we can push down into this sort of weekly fair value gap. Price can then react from there, push higher, and then from here, price can then come up, tap into this fair value gap, and then drop lower from there. That would still be sticking in line with this 4-hourly structure that we've got where we've put in a lower low, lower high, lower low. Or on the flip side, what could happen is price can come down, tap into this weekly area of interest and blast straight through all of this, break above this key area and completely flip the 4-hourly from bearish to bullish. So then instead of a lower low, this would be considered a higher low, and then we would put in a higher high. So I hope that made sense how we're seeing things in sort of the multi-time frame structure where we understand where we are on all of the different time frames as opposed to just fixating on the one current time frame we're on. So that's the 4-hourly. Let's drop down to the hourly, and what can we see? We can pretty much refine this 4-hourly fair value gap to this one because it is nicely nestled inside. And apart from that, we can also pretty much refine this fair value gap to up here. So we've got these two fair value gaps. Mind you, we do have another one here and another one here, but I would expect to see a little bit higher pricing potentially up here or up here. So that pretty much wraps up the hourly. There's nothing else. It's literally just a straight line down. US30 just dropped so hard on a Friday. The 30 is the exact same, and the 15-minute is similar too. So let's identify what can potentially happen come tomorrow morning. So we can build up in the Asia session such as this. If we then sweep the lows and we tap into this weekly fair value gap, then we can get a nice push to the upside. We can get a nice bullish trade. If not, if we go into the opposite direction and we sweep the highs of the Asia session, we can tap into this hourly fair value gap, which is also in line with our sort of market sentiment. And from there, we can drop to come into this weekly area. From there, we can go higher or we can go lower. So we've got both sides of the table. Both of them would actually work out based on how we viewed the market. It would just be a case of waiting till tomorrow morning and seeing what actually happens. But that's going to wrap up US30. And last but not least, let's move over to NAS100. Coming up to the daily time frame, and what can we really see? Well, similar story to US30. We are very, very bullish. However, we've not had that market structure shift. So we were putting in a series of high highs, higher lows, higher highs. And now this is where things get a little bit more confusing, because this is now our higher high, which we have failed to break over the past 4 days. Not only that, we've then got this as our higher low, and our price is stuck inside of this trading range. And we've been stuck inside of this trading range since we created this low, which was a whole 94 days ago. That's 3 months of price action being in this sideways market. Now, this is somewhere where we don't really want to be, because then we're reliant on substructure on the lower time frames to tell us what's going on, and sometimes that can be a little bit detrimental to our trading. So on the daily time frame, we are bullish, yes. However, we failed to create a brand new higher high 5 days in a row, and from there we've dropped really hard. So going down to the 4-hourly. Now the 4-hourly again is very confusing, because if we take a look at it from the beginning, we were putting in a series of higher highs, a higher low, a higher highs. Then we had a market structure shift, price then put in a lower low, lower high, failed to put in a lower low, and we were stuck inside of this trading range. Then we finally got another lower low, and then we were stuck inside of this trading range. And then price gave us a push to the upside, gave us a higher high, higher low, and then we were stuck inside of this trading range. And we were stuck inside of this for a while, and then we've just put in this brand new higher high. Price is now coming down to put in a higher low, and then from here, we can potentially just drop and completely invalidate this, as we've done so previously, and put in a lower low and then be stuck inside of that range for a while and then break that. And then who knows? The consolidation may continue for another 90 odd days. We just don't know. Because we're stuck inside of that consolidation, it's always best to just kind of trade the markets with the understanding that you're trading it blind. Yes, the daily is bullish, but there's a lot of consolidation. There's a lot of things going on right here. So let's just focus on most recent price action. So we've got higher low, higher high. From there, we can anticipate that if the bullish trend continues, this is going to be our higher low. And then from there, we see higher prices to a brand new higher high. So now, where is price potentially likely to stop? Well, all of this is pretty efficient price action. Had this order block, got closed out. We then broke structure. Price then closed out this right here. And then from there, we had a push higher. And the only thing that looks like it has not been closed out, the only inefficient price action I can see is inside of this wick. So let's highlight this wick so that we can drop down to the lower time frames and identify if there is anything of significance inside of there. Now on the hourly, if we take a look at again substructure, we can see that the hourly has flipped bearish. High high, higher low, higher high, market structure shift, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. So now the hourly has flipped bearish and it's given a substructure to the downside. So now this is our last point of demand. If this doesn't hold, then the likelihood of price continuing to drop is very, very high. This isn't really interesting. Dropping down to the 30-minute and taking a look at what's going on right there. And now things get a little bit more interesting. We've got the very extreme of this right here, this nice order block with this fair value gap just above it. This looks quite interesting. I do expect price to give us a nice reaction once it taps into this zone. So let's identify that and drag it out. Again, that is sitting just below where current price action is. So that's interesting because we'll see how price reacts to it when it gets there tomorrow. So let's just check it out on the 15-minute. Is there anything else that's interesting? As we can see, this was the last fair value gap and order block which was left before price rallied away, creating more efficient price action. So that's pretty interesting. That's very, very interesting. Let's go back to current price action. And now, what can we potentially see come tomorrow morning? Now, I would be very interested in seeing price build up Asia session like this, giving us a sweep of the lows and tagging into this area of demand. And then from there, seeing higher prices. That would be my A+ setup. That is what I'd be looking for if I was to just trade NAS100 based off of everything that we've seen today. I would be very, very happy with taking that trade. If not, on the other side, the lower quality setup is a potential build up of the Asia session like this, a sweep higher, tapping into this hourly fair value gap. And then from there, we see lower prices and then tapping into here and then higher prices. Either can work, but we'll find out come tomorrow morning when the markets are open. But that pretty much wraps up NAS100. So that's EU, GU, NAS, and US30. And just for the sake of it, because we're here, let's take a look at gold as well. So let's remove all of the joins that we've got on the chart. And taking a look at gold, gold is very different compared to the rest of it because we've just had this monstrous push to the upside over the past 60 days. Over the last 2 months, we've just been continuously pushing to the upside. Now, that is due to everything that's going on geopolitically around the world, and we've got a whole load of unrest in the markets, which means a lot of investors are coming to safe havens like gold, which is why gold has just been dramatically pushing to the upside. So analyzing it is going to be a little bit difficult, but on the daily, we've had obviously that break of structure to the upside. So we are very, very bullish. Now it is pretty efficient. There's not much that, price hasn't closed out. As we can see, the efficient manner, we left this fair value gap, price tapped it, moved along. We left this fair value gap, price came and tapped it, moved along. We then had this order block, tapped, moved along. Order block, tapped, moved along. So now the only inefficient area that we've got on the market at the moment is this very small fair value gap just above, which actually got tapped into, as we can see right there. So even that has just been tapped into. Now I do want to see it get completely closed out. That would be a lot better. But as we can see, we are failing to put in a new high. We've tried that for the past 4 days and we haven't been able to. So potentially the 4-hourly will give us a little bit of a better understanding as to why. But even the 4-hourly is very, very nice, right? We've had higher high, higher low, a higher high, higher low. And then we failed to create a higher high right there, but then we've come and created that higher high right here. So now the next anticipation is that we get lower pricing. Price comes down into some of these premium areas, and then we get a continued push to the upside. So the 4-hourly looks really, really good. And this daily fair value gap that we've got right here, we do actually have a lot of liquidity sat above that as well. So that's very, very interesting. Now we will refine this daily fair value gap to this 4-hourly fair value gap that we've got literally just below it right there. So that looks very interesting. Now, taking this based off of the swing trading strategy that I teach inside of my course, let me give you guys a trade that I will be taking myself. Now, this is more of a swing trade. It's not something that I'm going to be sending inside the signals group because the signal group is pretty much just daily trade setups, right? This is a swing trade that I will be taking on my own personal setup, but I can see it looks very, very nice. We had this liquidity which got swept right here, and then we had a breaker structure on the 4-hourly. Now, the swing trading strategy, If you guys haven't seen the video of it, go and watch it because it is a very powerful strategy. So on the 4-hourly, we've had this liquidity being swept. And with this liquidity, we've swept it, we've broken structure. And now if we take our fib, we can see that this fair value gap, this area of interest, which is also a daily area of interest, lines up perfectly inside of the 61.8 and the 71 fib level. This is perfect because I'll be very happy to take this trade based on all of the confluences meeting together. So this swing trade, I'm going to be taking like this. Now you've got two different ways of taking it. You can take it on the way that I teach in the course, which is just to take it as a limit placed directly on either the 61 or the 71% or on this area of interest with the stops just below this low of the swing and targeting a brand new high. It's going to give you a 1 to 1.5 risk to reward. This to me is a very, very safe trade. And the reason why I say that is because you can see that this setup actually played out before as well. And if we take a look at it, you can see right here, we had this sweep of liquidity. From there, we had this breaker structure to the upside. So then if we take a swing right here from this swing to this swing, we can see that again, nestled inside of the 61.8 and the 71, we had this fair value gap, which price then came, tapped into perfectly. And then we had that nice push to the upside, which gave us the nice TP right there. So if I mark this out, you can see that we had that nice wick entry. Price then did not go anywhere close to the stop loss, and it gave us a nice push to the TP. So just to show that this setup has actually played out on gold previously as well, and the same exact fractal trade is happening right here too. So we've got this sweep of liquidity, break of structure to the upside, and then that's it. So if you guys want to learn this strategy in more detail, it is inside of the course. It's all the way down in the trading strategy section, so go and check that out. But that pretty much wraps up gold. So this is what I'm going to be taking over the next week, or this limit is what I'm going to be putting in. Or if you guys don't want to take it as a limit, what you can do, and this is probably what I'm going to be doing as well, when price comes down into this area of interest, drop down to the 5-minute, go and watch the video inside of the course about all of the different entry criteria, all of the entry schematics. Pick one that you feel like is a good fit for you, one that you can understand really well, and then wait for that entry schematic to play out and give you the entry confirmation when price gets all the way down into this zone. So that is what I'm personally going to be doing myself, but I'm also going to be setting up the limit on my personal account as well. So that's what we're looking at on gold. So that's going to wrap up EU, GU, NAS, US30 and gold. So I hope you guys enjoyed this weekly outlook. If you did, let me know by dropping me a DM. If there's any page you want me to cover in the next weekly outlook, let me know again by dropping it in the DMs. But I hope you guys have all had a great weekend, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow morning for some great trading setup.